Now in this part I've got it roughly taped together because I need some measurements, and what I'm going to do is make an insert that fits. So I've got 2 centre lines in the body, and what I'm going to do is use some cardboard, put a centre line with a cross, and then we'll measure the distance there, and then we'll measure the back distance in between, the front distance, and then draw the lines together. Does that make sense? And hopefully if we can get it right in cardboard, I should be able to cut it out of this piece of plastic, and then once it's a perfect fit, then I will cut it out for accessibility, and this will be mounted 1 millimetre, 2 millimeters below the top, and then magnets underneath, so the roof can go on magnetically, but I'll be able to work on the interior at any time I fancy. So then I can just build a solid floor in once this is mounted to the lorry. That's one thing I've got to do, is work out how I'm going to bolt it on first, before sort of, I don't want to run before I walk, because what I'm thinking of is having bolts coming out the back and it slides onto the bed and you just put some nuts on. There we go, I've marked out the insert. Now I'm going to cut it and see if it lines up once taped in. Well, there's the template, and there's the insert. It's not tight because it's not all pulled into place yet, but that's got to be now trimmed out, and I've got to make a second one. Now I've got the cab loosely, very loosely tacked together because it's not important totally, but what it is trying to get a height to line up how much clearance I want here. Remember, I've got to allow an extra 2 millimeter for wheel arch. I'll try and get the rear into view. So the rear, we've got, it's more than a ruler. We need a bit more than a ruler. What we got? What we got? Actually, this might be the way to do it. No, it's too wide. See, what I'm trying to do is get a mark just on here to transfer to the back to line up with the top of the rear cab where I want to mount it. So, hence why I've got it is roughly the ruler's depth there, and then we want a couple of millimeters. So I'm not being funny, that line there for the window, I'm going to say is pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to use that as my line. I'm going to make that match up with the back of the cab there. So all I've got to do is transfer the lines onto here, and then we can use that to drill and mount this right central on the back. Now I've marked out a lot more. I've got a couple of lines on the bed to know where to be in between of. I've got the line at the back for height and at the front, so I'm going to put that line across, and then I've got 4 mounting points, which are, like I said, the bolts have got to be worked out afterwards, but what the case is literally getting it as square as possible and on. So it's carefully drilling one hole, and then you line up the second, and then the last 2 bottom ones will be just a straightforward easy drill through. Then we've got to spacers and everything, so this fits but just has a slight gap from the back. That's what we need. There we go, the panel's bolted on, but it's too tight at the moment. Like I said, we're now going to make the spacers out of tubes, and I'll probably epoxy on the first part solid, so it'll make it captive, so when you put it through you'll be able to bolt on and you won't have to worry about getting to these because they'll be solid. There we go, 4 bolts, 3mm spacers, and then nylox and epoxy resin, and when the cab goes on, it will slide on like that, and then just 4 bolts on the inside to secure it to the rear. Nice and simple, but that's out the way. So the next thing is we're going to start putting the cab together, and hopefully this part goes well. Now I'm going to attempt the assembly. We got the frame and we know that's the bottom, so I'm going to mark it top and then clean off what's on the bottom. Do that now. So this is where it gets awkward, because I put them on. I can't do it like that, but it's not too major a problem. Now with the sides, it doesn't matter that I've removed the lettering left and right. It's because the grooves go on the outside. So if we lay that one down like that, we know this has got to line up. Just check sizes. There's nothing off, because there is, I'm sure one is slightly off. No, it seems alright. So we'll lay it down, we know the back, we know that's the top, that's the bottom. And then we'll start tacking this lightly together. The good thing is the back can be done all the way, because that is not going to be affected by the rest of it. But we can't go too mad, because we've got to fit the frame in. And that's got to be gapped to 2mm. See, that's just loosely gapped on. We'll take the frame, as we know, with the top, and we've got to have this at 2mm gapped. So I'll use a bit of plastic to roughly gauge it. And I'll start, like I said, I'm not going to go mad, it's just to get this to hold into place for a second. It's showing slightly bowed, so give it a tweak if you need to. And then we'll do the other end. Because it doesn't matter if the gap is slightly over, you don't want it really under. I'm going to move it to the edge of the bench so I can feel the positioning. That's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that. It's going okay so far. I'm going to push down hard and then give it a wipe. So it's going to get to a point where I'm going to have, like I said, I'm going to have to leave it in this part of the video. This is where it gets tricky, is doing this second half. There we go. That's roughly tacked. Now we'll go heavy again. And I'm going to push down. And one last light wipe to tidy. And there we go, it's starting to hold together really well. Now we can add in the next side. This is where it gets a bit more tricky. Once it starts going together, it'll be a breeze. But the main thing is to make sure it lines up at this corner. And then we'll go above and try and get this front secured now. That'll stop the wobbling. There we go. Push that down. Then we can do the rest of this side. I know it's not very exciting watching this part, but there we go, we've got the first part done. Now putting this front off on, it's not as gone as well as I thought. It's slightly off, just an absolute net. So I'm going to have to fit it and add plastic later on. The cab basic structure is there. I've added a little bit of strengthening inside for now. This is making sure the front is strong. When it's slightly off, like I said, I'm going to use some mixture a bit at a time. So what I'm going to do is just slightly wet it first and dip it in the liquid plastic. And what I'll do is I'll let it dry a bit, and then I'll peel the tape off and put new tape on and keep adding until it's filled up enough. Oh, does help if I go on the right stuff. And like I said, you can replace it with pure plastic this way. But wipe your brush off in between and give it a clean, because otherwise it'll get clogged with the plastic. But this is as far as I'm going, because once this is done, it's got to be left to cure for a good 24 hours. Let it get strong. But it does seem to be square at the moment, which is a good sign. A couple of little bits I've got to straighten up. Well, this concludes it for this video. Until the next one.